let's get back to work. Well, we're in the home stretch. Had one session that I didn't put on YouTube. So let's just kind of zip forward. We'll do a real quick recap and then just get to work. Yeah. So Golik's working the crowd. Oh yeah, and then the rains come. One of the deficiencies I noticed in this scene, the wedding situation, was that TNR's mother actually wasn't appearing anywhere in the scene, which is kind of ridiculous since obviously it's her daughter that was pledged to be married. So I went ahead and put in a shot with Vespigi and Karlina. And so he brings Vespar out, but the rain stops, which calls into question what the heck is going on here. Karlina and Vespigi. By the way, this is, I would say, not entirely accurate. Vespigi has a little more beard than that, and we want to always make sure that his hair covers up his right eye. That's kind of his little visual gimmick that ties him to his younger self in the show. Okay. So Golik gets the people calmed down a bit. Hey, the rains were just a sample of what is yet to come. Bring forth the future queen. Vespar gives a nod. And here you see Vespigi is in fact going to the tent to collect Tianara. Ignore this red, that's used in a later shot. So Vespar comes into the scene, approaches the tent, and says, Tianara, come forth, in his most authoritative sounding voice. As you can see from these faces, nothing really happens. And he kind of chuckles to the guard, and he tries again, and a little bit louder, Tianara, come forth. And then he sneaks up close to the tent to see if anything can be heard inside. Tianara. And Golik marches up. What is going on? Because everything's being badly delayed here. I kind of made the decision, by the way, that Vespar's headdress, I'm not going to go with this. Probably should turn that off selected for the moment. I'm going to give him a headdress more like everyone else's. It'll still have that little piece in the front, I think. But anyway. So Golik is being a little bit impatient, swings the tent open to look inside with Vespar standing behind. And it's obvious that Tianara is not there. Vespar's like, but she was here just a minute ago. Golik grimaces in frustration. This soldier, being the good man that he is, admits that it's his fault. I was on guard here. Golik says, you're going to pay with your life, to which Vespar's like, what? Golik, I'm sure he didn't mean to. Well, Golik will have none of it, and he swings the tent open again. By the way, bearing in mind that this whole section from here to here, from here to here could in fact be skipped. If you needed to save some time, you could just go to the first entry of the tent. Anyway, he looks in, glances around, and you see a smash zoom into this rolled up parchment that is under the table, which I drew a little more decoratively this time around because I think it needs a little bit better decoration. You get a little bit of a scowl on Golik. He picks up the letter. His eyes are darting back and forth, as you can see. And while he's reading the letter, Vespigi swings open this side of the tent entrance and says, "What's the delay?" Vespar, frankly, I don't think looks very good right there. This is why it's good to do the work and then come back after a little while. So Vespar's kind of in the background. And also Carlina is in the background as well. I don't know what game, and so this is, I came up with a little bit of dialogue to fold Carlina more properly into the scene. And so she says, "I don't know what game you're playing, Vespigi, but there better be a good explanation." Of course, Vespigi doesn't know what's going on. And Golik says, "Treachery." Meanwhile, it cuts back here, and this is the back view of the tent that we saw before. And we have Mel essentially pacing in the foreground, and he has a bit of a monologue he does. So basically, this is an opportunity for the script to breathe a little bit. And it's like, what does he say? He's like, I mean, I technically didn't lose the letter. I mean, it was stolen, right? By a monkey. Asher's gonna kill me. Anyway, that type of thing. But then he hears the muffled voice of Vespigi saying, "Where could she be?" I can see here as I'm looking at this that probably in this shot Mel should be slightly smaller and framed up a little better. That'll work. Okay, so here you'll see the tent here. So based on the color of the canvas or whatever, you should be able to discern that that's the edge of the tent. And then Mel moves into the shot to eavesdrop. So Golik announces that he seems to think that she was kidnapped. Little correction here. What? Outrageous. And Vespigi's like, "Golik, how is this possible?" And he says, "I found this letter." Okay, so now Mel then reacts, because remember, the thing that Mel lost was the letter. Oh dear, that's not what was supposed to happen just now. Let's just jump to the end and roll back a bit. Sorry about that. Okay, so kidnapped. How is it possible? I found this letter. "My friend, this wedding does not bode well for the prince or the kingdom. It must be stopped at all cost." I don't know about the word all. At any cost. This is Asher's doing. Asher? And of course Carlina says, "Who?" And Vespar is simply mystified. I'm sure of it. Anything to subvert the crown. Asher. "Oh, my king. Need I say that I tried to warn you about his scheming? He'll pay for this with his head." And that makes Golik happy. Slight push in. And then out here Mel is realizing, "Oh my gosh, I need to go warn Asher." So, Entschuldigen Sie bitte. That means "excuse me" in German. And now we can get back to work. Well, what happens next? Golik, Vespigi, and Vespar march out onto the stage. Golik raises his hands to silence the crowd. Okay, so let's go ahead and let Open Tunes think for a long time. I think what I'll do is close it and open it. One thing with Open Tunes is that I'm I'm not 100% sure of this. I've never checked it in the task manager, but I'm pretty sure that OpenTunes has a proclivity to become a memory leaker, meaning the memory and computational footprint seems to grow over time. And more than once I've seen a situation with OpenTunes that's basically fixed itself by just opening and closing it. Well, I should say the opposite, closing and opening it. And so, not a bad idea. It's been open actually for quite a while. So, we'll just forge ahead. Now, if we're going to have this situation, I tell you the truth. Okay, this is 448. Let me look here. I tell you the truth. I was going to use this shot, but actually, I'm kind of loving this shot. This is not only framed better, but it's definitely the way more economical shot, because you have a simpler background. You don't need to show all the soldiers and everybody in the background, and you can just have some of the audience in silhouette in the foreground. So I mean, I'd say it's apples for apples if it wasn't for the fact that the framing of Golik actually looks so much better. So therefore, we're going to go Control C and go here, and I'll show you how we're going to play this. All right, we're going to leave Golik's arms the way they are in this shot. Okay, but let's go ahead and just get rid of this indication of rain, since obviously the rain has stopped. Okay, so the rain's come. That doesn't need to be in there anymore. What I'm thinking is let's go ahead and modify it thusly. Let's go ahead and put this Spiegel here. So this is kind of slick in that our principal characters can actually move into frame this way, and all we need to do is kind of bounce them a little bit so they look like they're actually doing a walk cycle, but we don't actually have to do a walk cycle. So this is, let me see here, this would be like this. So all you have to see is something of that nature to sell what's going on here. So I'm going to put Vespigi, actually, I'm going to put him just a little closer to Golik. And then I'm going to put Karlina behind him. So we need to make sure that we look like we're angling up. But yeah, she comes in. And then over here, I would say something about like this. We'll put Vespar. And the staging, he's actually too big, but that's pretty typical because I always draw characters a little too big. So we'll put him here. So this will actually be tricky to animate from a timing standpoint, but not really from a drawing standpoint. The drawing will be quite easy, you know, especially because these guys are all in sort of wide shots. One thought that's occurring to me right now is it wouldn't actually be a bad idea if in the earlier shots where we see Karlina, that's Tianara's mother, in this whole wedding scene, it might be interesting to actually have her veiled until they're in the tent and she's ticked off, and then she just rips off her veil because she doesn't care about protocol unless it's for show. So in front of all the people she might wear her veil, but once she gets ticked off, she's all business and doesn't take any guff from anybody. So anyway, so this works. Golik comes out and listen to me, a great evil has been visited upon us and stopped the rain. Okay, So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give myself a few frames to work with. So I just hit the B key and then touch the screen twice and nothing happened. So that tells me that I was wrong. It appears to me that OpenTunes is being just as draggy about. Usually this is what it is. It's either when you create a new frame or duplicate a frame. It seems like it wants to really be a bit of a pokey butt. Okay, and now that's a blank frame. Let's just make a bunch of duplicates. So we've got some blank frames to work with. That brings us up to 510, and it would be prudent to save our work. And I just clicked and nothing happened, so that tells me that OpenTunes didn't really show me that it was saving, but in fact it kind of was thinking about maybe deciding to save, because I did tell it to save, but it waited to show me until I actually clicked something. So a little annoying, without a doubt. But here we go. So here's this scene. I'm going to actually tell you what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to move this down. So these are all just blank frames that I have handy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the crowd so that I can just go like this. And then I'm going to make an amendment to it like this. I'm going to take these guys that are in the foreground for this shot. Okay, that's interesting. Let's try that again. Okay, let's grab that. And now we're going to... I don't know if that's actually the right thing to do, but I'm going to try it. So now for my purposes of this shot, I'm actually going to erase these guys. And now, because I really want to leverage this shot. I want to use it over and over. Okay, so what I see here is that I was somewhat wrong-ish. What I really want to do is make this shot of Golik into a medium close-up, and actually all these crowd guys that are in the foreground should just be taken out. They're not actually helping the shot. Alright, that might be a little too big. But yeah, I just want to get Golik out there by himself without having the crowd to fiddle with. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the opposite. Okay, and you'll see why in a moment. Alright, and I would say for our purposes on this shot, we can probably just grab his arms. Let's anchor him to his shoulder points and just kind of drop them down by his side. I probably will edit those a little bit more, I guess, since the shoulder point wasn't actually that helpful. I'm going to go like this. Okay, so I know his costuming is just botched all to pieces. That's okay. I just need to be able to see what it's going to be, and I'm okay. So alright, I actually think I had the wrong idea. So I'm just going to get the arms out. And let's just go with blue. Okay. And if you can believe this, you're going to laugh at me now, because I just realized what I really need to do is just get rid of Golik entirely, at least from the angle that I had drawn him. So I do want him to be angled up, but he actually turns his head toward the Spiegel. So So I'm thinking what we really want is, he's a barrel-chested guy. So I'm going to go ahead and just indicate his hands here, like this. But now Vespigi steps up and puts his hand on Golik's shoulder and addresses the crowd. And he has his fist in the air. Okay. I know, I'm making faces again. Okay, we're keeping the drawing very loose at this point. I've drawn these guys plenty of times. I don't need to draw them 50,000 times in detail for a storyboard. In many cases, probably the actual faces, for example, will potentially come out of some pre-baked assets, because by this time in the show everybody's been drawn enough times that we know what they look like and probably have some reusable assets. So I'm kind of going back to the way I was doing the storyboarding when I was doing it in Krita. Very rapid. Okay. I'm loving Vespigi more and more. The more I see of him, I'm realizing he's really underutilized in the show. He's got a neat look to him, and he's got a neat attitude that I want to see more of. Especially because one of the dirty little secrets about this whole situation is that even though Vespigi's kind of a bad king, he really was a bad king largely because he got sucked into it by Golik. You know, he had the proclivity to be a bad guy, but really Golik is the one who roped him into an evil plan, which I won't recap here. But okay, so Vespigi. Actually, let's go back and get some dialogue in here. Okay, so these guys move into frame, and as they're moving into frame, Golik's going to raise his hands and announce the crowd. So he's basically saying, "Listen to me. A great evil's been visited upon us, and stopped the rain." And we're going to have a frame in here with the crowd. And the princess, the prince's, actually is, it's not the princess bride, it's the prince's bride, has been, okay, and now let's do this. Okay. Here, I'm going to just, again, we're going to use just indications because we've already drawn these guys over and over. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put these faces in the crowd with a little bit of indication of costuming. These guys do have sort of your Middle Eastern deserty type robes. A lot of them are going to have beards. Some of them are going to have their wives with them, perhaps wearing veils or at least having their heads covered. By the way, if that was one of those wives, she would probably be slightly smaller than the man. It's not a rule, but with human beings, normally the females are smaller. I only mention that because it happened to come up in another conversation today that in many parts of the animal kingdom, the females are actually larger, like for example with many kinds of insects. So, who knew? Alright, so you got this crowd that we're going to have to figure out a way to render this crowd. And some of them will be a little bit on the silly side, like this guy, and some will be tall and skinny with hair parted in the middle, all being somewhat of a caricature, I suppose. But what's the point? Well, the point is The crowd murmurs in stunned silence. Okay, so the only thing I really want to correct here is this guy seems a little bit out of proportion there. So okay, so crowd murmurs in stunned silence. Maybe we'll have another individual in the foreground. Right? Okay. There it is. There's the crowd. Maybe another one here. Why not? Maybe another one here. Doesn't matter. We just want to make sure we sell it. Okay, we're going to sell the crowd. Sell the crowd. Woman with head covered. How about that? Big eyes. Okay. Couple probably unnecessary adjustments, but what the heck? I'm feeling frisky. Okay. Crowd murmurs in stunned silence. Okay, the prince's bride has been, and then I think we need to cut to a nice tight shot of Golik here. We'll kind of do this Jack Kirby style. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to make this a production ready drawing of Golik actually. I just want to give the indication. Say Jack Kirby style because he always did mouths like this, you know. Alright, has been kidnapped. So here's his mustache. And okay, so yeah, the whole idea is just to be able to cut from this to this. And the mouth situation is actually a little bit stupid looking there. Alright. Kidnapped. Alright, I'm going to hit Alt Save. That saves the level because I set up that hotkey. And net result. Once again, OpenTunes wants to think. Well, as long as it's saving the stuff, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a little thinkage. When it's done, I'm going to go ahead and use the selection tool to actually make this a little bit narrower, a little bit more accurate to the character. No harm in that. Alright, what I'm going to do is take this shot, stick it here, and now we're up to this shot. Vespigo steps forward. Such evil cannot stand. It's an inexcusable insult. And what I want to do is there's some subtlety to this one, in that Golik is always playing the crowd, and what happens here is Vespigi steps up and says that this is an intolerable insult. Well, the thing that that Vespigi would miss in this situation, especially because remember the crowd was kind of complaining about the taxes and disrupting the wedding ceremony, they may not really care about the fact that this is an insult to the king. And so Golik, being the guy that's always playing the crowd and trying to maneuver every situation to his best advantage, Okay. So you see we've got these two angles on Golik. So the king says, such evil cannot stand. It's an inexcusable insult. To which Golik turns his countenance away from the king and to the crowd and says to each and every one of you. So Golik has a little bit more finesse when it comes to how to spin the story. At which point Vespigi nods agreeably. So we'll say Vespigi nods. Okay, so this gets us through page 42 and into 43. Actually, he says yes. Yes. Okay, so then I'm just gonna use this shot as reference, and let's go ahead and make a dupe so I can make their attitudes slightly different. So this guy's got his fist in the air, maybe both fists in the air. People are crying out. So let's do more of that. I like the fist in the air thing. It definitely captures the attitude quite nicely. Okay, that just kind of sells the idea that when we cut back to the crowd, they're going to be they're saying miscellaneous things, like this guy cries out, "Vengeance! We must bring back the rain." She says, "It's evil. It's a curse on our land." So basically Golik, with a little help from Vespigi, gets the crowd going. Okay, now I'm going to reuse this shot. Control C, Control V, and D. I'm going to make it into a duplicate, and that way I can take this out. And he says, "Fear not, the prince has sworn to bring the perpetrators to justice." So we're just going to put "Fear not, justice." Okay, this is a key line because Vespar did not see that coming. Okay, so all I'm going to do is indicate the keyframes here. Okay. Like me, did I just belch into the... Okay. So Vespar didn't see that coming. Well, this is by design. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play it this way. Here's Vespar. And I'm going to put Golik right here. And we'll move him in a little bit, because we do want Spigi here in the foreground. Okay. And what Golik does is he claps his hands together and then acts deferential. Alright, again, we're keeping the drawings simple right now. So Golik is working the crowd. He claps his hands and says, "Speak, my prince." That doesn't look right. How would that be? This, of course, looks silly. So I'm not going to completely solve this right now if I'm pretty sure the framing is good. It's not quite there, I think. Let's go ahead and make a little adjustment here. Okay. Want his hands up. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so he's deliberately trying to get the crowd roped into encouraging Vespar to step forward and speak, in which Vespar, of course, is so easily pushed into whatever that he's going to do it. The Spigi would not object to this, even though obviously it is not really true that the prince has sworn to bring the perpetrators to justice. But of course, in terms of how the Spigi would want to posture in front of the crowd, he would be perfectly okay with that little gambit. And then he would likewise encourage his son to go ahead and speak to the crowd. Everything's kind of about politics with these guys. Excuse me. All right. Okay, and I want to change that. Let's change that angle a little bit. Let's make it a little more up. Maybe not quite that much. So yeah, he would be a little taken aback by having to address the crowd. Okay, and back here, Golik would be feeding the situation. Your prince. Listen to your prince. And of course, the Spigi would join in clapping for whatever words the prince has to say. I don't think it's really necessary. We have him clapping. Let's not do that, actually. Okay, so the idea here is that Vespar's kind of glancing around nervously at the crowd, like, what am I supposed to do? Let me see here. Cool. And I'm going to actually stick Carolina back here in the background as well. Okay, that's not too bad. This is kind of sort of Vespar's moment, is it not? Alright. I went a little too far with his goofy look, and probably with his nose. But that's okay. I know it's Vespar. Alright. I think that this is this is actually up to this point in his life. This is Vespar's seminal moment. And Golik has put him up to it. I don't know that he's actually going to say anything in this shot. He might say for too long. Okay. He's got a bit of a... Well, he says, for too long our land has suffered the ravages of a malevolent curse. just kind of going with what I feel right now in terms of the. No, this is good. This feels pretty good. Okay, so I think what is bugging me on this shot is that actually he's not as the prince. His what he's gonna say here comes from a good place. It doesn't come from a malevolent place. Okay, he's really trying to do his proper job as prince. So for too long our land has suffered the ravages of a malevolent curse. Okay? Alright, so now let's get rid of that. Hit the B key. And let's save all. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick the crowd in reacting. When he says a malevolent curse, you hear the crowd saying, "Yeah, enough, justice." Alright. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the drawing of the crowd, and then we'll just repeat it wherever we need to repeat it to make it work. So, okay. So I'm just going to kind of move these guys out of the way, and actually we'll move this guy up. And I would say Vespigi here would be nodding. He has a tendency to nod at everything Golik does. Speak, my prince. Definitely going to have to use the musical score here to build this up. Alright, I think it'd be cool if he puts his hand up like this to silence the crowd. And we don't want it to make him look like he's doing a Nazi salute, so therefore I'll have his other hand up here as well. So his hands are going to come into frame. And again, it's a seminal moment. So here he is, ignore the arms. And he looks kind of nervous and awkward, actually, doesn't he? So, okay, stop. B key. Okay, so that's actually too high. Okay, see, so he looks weak-ish. But then, out of nowhere, this kid puts his arms up to silence the crowd. He's rising to the moment. I think it's a pretty cool thing, actually. And even though it's for all the wrong reasons to a degree, he can't possibly know that, and number one. And number two, it speaks to something that's going to be very important about this kid's character a long time from now. Because the thing you got to realize about Vespar, and we're not going to really see it for a while in this show, is that he's actually a really good guy at heart. But he's really been steered in the wrong direction by Golik and, to a lesser degree, his father. Admittedly, his slightly Asian eyes here are frighteningly reminiscent, probably, of Zuko in Avatar, and I apologize for that. But I don't think he looks too much like him. Okay, so let's go back to the crowd. Here we go. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the selection tool. I wonder if the selection tool can be selective, as they say. It doesn't look like it is. In other words, I was wondering if you can make it so it selects only one color. But there's a workaround for the fact that it can't. Watch this. I'll show you the workaround. Okay. Select everything. Okay, let's go here and paste it in, and then we'll switch to red and do a selective erasing. Cool, huh? Okay, and so, and really, their expression with their hands and whatnot should really be more similar to the last shot of them, but it really doesn't matter. We just need to make sure we're telling the story here. So here it's going to be, yeah, enough. Justice. And then the next time we see him, it's going to be here, here. Okay, so I'm going to use this shot twice. Alright. Okay. So now this is going to be Vesper really rising to the moment. You betcha. Alright. So, and he says, and this crime, ... is the final straw. And, okay, they do say the here thing, so I'm going to go Control C, Control V, and save my work. Okay, so that gets me to the end of page 43. Now the question is, I think we should have a cutaway shot . I think we should have a cutaway shot of the Spiegel clapping his hands, encouraging Vespar, and Golek doing the same. Alright, he's too large. He needs to be taller, but okay. Alright, he throws his hand up in the air in support of Vespar. Alright. And Vespar says, I will personally stop at nothing. So let's just kind of get this in here. Okay, and this is a shot that we'll be able to do a jump cut to a tight close-up if we want to. So we could, at an appropriate moment, perhaps jump to this. So we'll call this a possible jump cut. because he says, I will personally stop at nothing to return my bride safely, end this curse, and return the prosperity we once knew. Okay, so I totally can see what I want to do here. What we're going to do is we're going to do actually 2 jump cuts. So we're going to have this nice pose of Vespar, and he's going to say, I will personally stop at nothing to return my bride safely. I need to change the line of dialogue because I've got the word return in there twice. What it's going to do is to return my bride safely, jump cut on the word end this curse, and then jump cut again on and return the prosperity we once knew. And I think even potentially we would, on the assuming I didn't change the dialogue, say return bride safely, possibly even multiple jump cuts. So this is not even optional. We're definitely going to do this. So this is going to be multiple jump cuts, and that will be really nicely dramatic to go chunk, 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 as he's saying these lines. And then for all practical purposes, you're really going to end on that shot. And so I guess to be completely accurate about it, we should make a copy so that we can take this dialogue out so I'm not confused later by it. Oopsie, I guess we are in selective mode and I've got blue selected, so sorry. And so this should be actually steely resolve with a slight push in. Yeah, that's good. All those jump cuts and then a push. He has really laid out his mission. Okay. All right. So now this is well, actually, let me look back here. I am going to reuse this shot. Let's just slide this down. We'll use this elsewhere. Control C, Control V. Okay, because Golik says, well said, my prince, well said. Vespigi says, indeed, I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so just for completeness here, I'm going to draw another instance of Golik's hands a little bit lower, and I'm going to draw Vespigi's arm down this way, just so we have this, so we see that there's some change, because probably on the first shot when I use this one, his hand will go up, but on the second one, it'll probably be down here. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Golik and Vespigi lines on next shot. Okay, and the only reason I'm doing that is because this shot is actually used twice in the storyboard and I don't want to confuse things, so I'm just reminding myself that their lines are on this shot, which makes perfect sense based on what's in the script. And by the way, I guess we have to make a duplicate of it anyway, so strike that. I'm going to put it back up here and change my mind about this. And the reason is that, okay, so he says the well said, my prince. He says couldn't have, which is he says well said, my prince, well said, and Vespigi says I couldn't have said it better myself. And then Golek turns to Vespigi and says, you must be so proud. my liege. Okay. And I think this should actually go here. And we'll call this, actually what we'll do is we'll just indicate, I'll put this in yellow. We may take this shot and use it with some jump cuts. So yeah, this is more like the storyboarding I was doing in Krita. It's pretty effective. I mean, I can tell what I intended. So here I've got the 2-shot, and at any time if I want to I can jump to the close-ups, which is kind of convenient. So, you know, whatever it takes to tell the story. Okay, so that's it. And I think we close out with this and fade to black. That brings us to the middle of page 44. There's only 6 pages to go. Well, actually that's not true. There's actually 52 pages, so I guess there's 8 to go. But after this scene, we're going to be going back to Mel and Asher. Kidnapped, outrageous. I found this letter. Mel's overhearing. He reads the letter. This is Asher's doing. Asher? I'm sure anything to subvert the crown. Oh, King, I tried to warn you. He'll pay with his head. Golik's happy. Mel needs to warn Asher. They come back out. Golik works the crowd. She's been kidnapped. How crazy is that? It's an insult to each and every one of you. Yes, let's get vengeance. It's a curse on our land, but fear not. There's going to be justice. The prince has vowed to see justice done. Huh? Who? Huh? Me? Speak, speak. The prince rises to the moment. For too long. A curse, yes. Justice, here, here. This is the last straw. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So. Yeah, last straw. They're celebrating that line. That's a great line. Golik's thinking. He's thinking, yeah, I wish I'd have come up with that one. I will stop at nothing with multiple jump cuts. And well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. You must be so proud. And then it cuts back to the resolve. This is great. This really sells the story. The resolve in Vespar's eyes. And it's just going to zoom in and fade to black. And the next thing we are going to see is going to be Asher saying, "Did they see you?" to Mel. Okay, this isn't amazingly great. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, and actually I don't know if I like that angle either, but I'm just going to put this in here. Whoops. Did they, hello, they see you? Okay, yeah, I don't like that. I think what we want is, let's do it a different way completely. Let's erase that. I really want to capture the drama of this moment. So I almost want it to feel like he's looking into the camera. That's better. Alright, maybe we could push it up just a little bit. And that's the beginning of the next scene, where it's a sad scene actually. This is the scene where Asher sees no option but to they have to leave. They can't stay. And so, and not only do they have to leave, but they can't go together. They have to go separate ways. And it is a sad scene. It's not very sad in terms of bringing about emotions in the viewer, mainly because it all happens kind of quickly. It's a high intensity situation. It's not a slow down and feel the emotion situation so much, but that's it for now. 8 pages to go. I'm going to hit the save button, and as you guys know, there will be more later.